I went to the Appalachian Mountains 3 years ago. I was 35 and tired of my job in the city. I rented a cabin by a peaceful lake near an old logging town. The cabin was small, but it felt cozy. I thought being surrounded by nature would help me with my wildlife photography. The first few days were quiet. I listened to the sounds of birds and the wind through the trees. It felt nice, but something about the woods felt off. There was a weight in the air, a feeling I couldn't shake. On my first night, I heard noises outside the cabin. I thought it was just wildlife, maybe a deer or a raccoon. I grabbed my camera but didn't see anything. Still, the sounds kept coming. There were rustling branches and soft thuds on the ground. I tried to convince myself that it was nothing, but when I settled into bed, a chill ran down my spine. Every creak of the wood made me jump. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there. I didn't sleep well that night. As the days went by, the sounds grew louder and more unsettling. They weren't normal. I started hearing whispers too, faint voices carried by the wind. I would glance at the trees and catch glimpses of shadows moving. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. My heart raced whenever I felt the presence of something or someone just behind the trees. I convinced myself I was imagining things. Still, I couldn't ignore how unsettled I felt when I was alone. The whispers started feeling personal. They echoed around me, and I couldn't understand the words. One afternoon, as I sat on the porch, I noticed a figure standing just at the edge of the woods. I squinted, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It was tall and seemed to be watching me. I felt drawn to it, a mix of curiosity and fear. My heart raced as I stood up. I stepped a little closer, but when I blinked, it was gone. Just like that, vanished. I looked around, my hands shaking. I didn't see any signs of it. The only thing I could hear was the rustling of leaves. That night, the whispers returned, louder than before. I felt trapped in the cabin. I could hardly breathe. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I couldn't tell if it was day or night. I finally gathered the courage to step outside, but the moonlight cast eerie shadows everywhere. The forest felt alive and hungry. That's when I saw it again. The same figure in the same spot. This time it didn't move. I felt drawn to it once more. I took a step forward, my mind racing. But just like before, when I looked again, it was gone. My stomach dropped. In its place, I felt a presence behind me. I turned quickly, but I was alone. I stood there, frozen, the forest silent except for my heavy breathing. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't. Something about being there kept me rooted in place. I didn't understand what was real and what wasn't, and I still don't. I left the mountains days later, but I carry the weight of those encounters with me. They linger in my mind. The woods weren't just quiet. They were watching. I still question what I experienced, and I don't think I'll ever know the truth. I didn't return to the Appalachian Mountains after that. For 3 years I tried to forget what happened. I picked up my camera again, took pictures of city life, and pretended the woods were just a distant memory. But something always felt missing. The images I captured lacked the raw beauty of nature. They felt flat, artificial. I found myself drawn back to the mountains, craving the thrill and fear I had felt there. This time, I arrived with a plan. I wanted answers. I would explore the old logging town for clues about the figure. Maybe the locals had stories to share. I rented a different cabin, one closer to the town. It felt less isolating and a little more inviting. Still, the memories haunted me. On my first night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch, looking into the darkness of the trees, listening for any familiar sounds. The air was still. After a while, I thought I heard whispers again. They danced through the night like a ghostly lullaby. I shook my head. I was being ridiculous. I told myself it was just the wind. The next day, I headed into town. I visited a small diner, hoping for some coffee and conversation. The locals eyed me cautiously as I entered. I didn't blame them. I must have looked like a lost city dweller. I took a seat at the counter and struck up a chat with the waitress. Her name was Molly. "What brings you back to these parts?" she asked, pouring my coffee. I hesitated. My urge to share my experience battled with fear of sounding crazy. "I was here a few years ago. I kept hearing things in the woods." Her expression shifted. I noted a slight tightening of her lips. "Sounds about right. The woods are full of stories. But what you hear, sometimes it's better to ignore." Her cryptic response sent a chill down my spine. "What do you mean?" I pushed, needing to know more. Molly glanced around before leaning in, her voice a whisper. "Some folks see things out there, shadows that watch. People don't talk about it much. It's a taboo." I felt my pulse quicken. "Did you ever see them? These shadows?" "No, but my granddad used to tell tales, said the woods have a life of their own and some things shouldn't be disturbed." She looked away, her hands trembling slightly as she finished wiping the counter. As I left the diner, I couldn't shake her words. What did disturbed mean? What were the whispers? I had to know. My heart raced as I walked back toward the cabin, the daylight fading quickly. Once inside, I grabbed my camera, feeling a surge of determination. I would find the truth. I was not leaving until I captured whatever was out there. Just as I looked through my lens, I caught a movement outside. I froze. The same tall figure from before was standing deep in the trees, more distinct this time. Somehow I sensed it was not just watching but waiting. Then everything went dark, as if the sun had vanished completely. I could no longer see anything through my camera. My breath caught in my throat. Had I stepped into a trap? I blinked, trying to adjust my eyes. But all I saw was an impenetrable darkness surrounding me. It felt like the cabin had shrunk in size, closing in on me, leaving no room for escape. The silence was heavy, as if the world had muffled all sound. My heart raced, hammering against my ribs. I put my camera down, hoping to gain some clarity. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. Then, out of the shadows, I heard it, the faintest rustle of leaves, followed by a whisper. My pulse quickened. Was it the wind again, or something else? I stepped to the window, peering outside, but the dark was thick and unyielding. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely more than a whisper. No response, just the rustling, like someone, or something, was moving. Closer. A sudden crash echoed from the porch. I jumped back, my heart leaping into my throat. The sound was so loud and sharp it felt like a warning. Was someone trying to get in? I quickly grabbed the nearest object, a heavy flashlight, and took a cautious step toward the door. As I reached for the doorknob, I hesitated. What if it was the figure? What if I opened that door and stepped into something I couldn't escape? But my curiosity drove me, pushing me to confront whatever was lurking outside. With a deep breath, I twisted the doorknob and pulled it open. Blinking against the sudden influx of moonlight, I scanned the porch. Nothing. The woods beyond were quiet, but I felt a presence in the air. Shadows shifted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Then, to my left, I heard it again. A soft rustle, followed by a low, almost melodic whisper. It beckoned me to follow, and before I knew what I was doing, my feet moved unconsciously toward the edge of the woods. The whispers grew louder, forming almost words, a language I couldn't understand but felt deep within me. I held the flashlight forward as if it could pierce through the dark, but the beam felt weak against the night. Doubt crept in. I could turn back. I could head inside and forget I ever heard anything. But just then, a figure emerged from the trees, more defined than before. I felt a chill race down my spine. It stood tall, its features obscured in shadow. My heart threatened to explode as I lifted my camera, desperate to capture this moment, this proof of what I was seeing. I pressed the shutter, but nothing happened. The camera sputtered. Confusion gripped me. I checked the lens. Everything seemed fine. I looked back up, but the figure was closer now. It felt sinister, predatory. Panic surged in me, but I was rooted to the spot, unable to move. That's when I saw it clearly. The eyes. They shone like lanterns in the dark, reflecting light in a way that left no doubt. This was not a mere shadow. I realized in that terrifying instant. This was not just something to capture on film. I was being pulled into a narrative I could not control. Then, in a heartbeat, the figure dashed back into the trees. I stumbled, adrenaline flooding my senses. I was left standing alone, clutching my flashlight as it flickered uncertainly. The whispers died down, replaced by the unsettling chorus of night creatures. Had I lost my chance? Or was something else waiting for me in the dark? I needed to know. I stepped forward, driven by a mixture of fear and determination. I wouldn't be leaving this place without answers. The air felt heavier as I stepped into the woods, each crack of a twig underfoot echoing in my ears like a drumbeat. The flashlight flickered again, barely illuminating the underbrush. My heart was racing, both with fear and a strange thrill. What was I hoping to find? Why was I drawn to the darkness when every fiber of my being screamed to turn back? The whispers had returned, swirling around me. They seemed to swirl close, playfully taunting me. Stay. Follow. I couldn't tell if I was imagining it, or if the wind carried genuine words. I squinted into the dark, each step taking me deeper into the unknown. If I kept going, I knew there was no turning back. Then, just ahead, I spotted something glimmering on the forest floor. Squinting closely, I realized it was an old pendant, half buried in the leaves. Instinctively, I reached down to pick it up. The moment I touched it, a chill ran up my arm. The whispers intensified, almost as if the woods were reacting to my discovery. I turned the pendant over in my palm, an intricate design etched onto its surface, familiar yet foreign. Suddenly a branch snapped behind me. I whipped around, flashlight beam darting through the shadows, heart hammering. There was nothing there, just darkness and the unsettling silence of the woods. But I could feel something, a pulse in the air. My skin prickled, as though I was being scrutinized from the shadows. I shoved the pendant into my pocket, forcing myself to focus on finding the source of the whispers. "Who's there?" I called out again, my voice firmer this time, but inside I felt like a child trying to summon courage against the monster in the dark. No answer, only more rustling leaves. Then the ground beneath me shifted. I stumbled as a soft thud landed behind me. It felt like something had stepped on a branch. My breath caught in my throat. I could sense the presence again, just out of sight, lurking. "Come out!" I shouted, spinning around, my flashlight beam slicing through the tree line. I half expected to see the figure again, but instead, I was met with an empty space, cloaked in shadows. Just as I was about to take another step, I caught sight of something in my peripheral vision, a fleeting shape darting through the trees. It was fast, agile. My instincts kicked in. I dropped the flashlight and took off after it, adrenaline surging. As I ran deeper into the woods, I could feel the air grow colder, pressing down on me. The whispers were relentless now, swirling around with each step I took. Stay. Stay. An urgency hung in their tone, weaving through my mind like a dark web. The figure led me further until I noticed a clearing up ahead. My heart skipped as I approached, looking for any sign of what I had been chasing. But when I stepped into the clearing, I was met with a sight that froze me in my tracks. A circle of stones, ancient and worn, stood in the middle, appearing almost like a portal to another world. And then I saw it, something glinting at the center of the circle. I didn't just feel watched anymore. I felt demanded. I took a cautious step forward. That's when everything shifted. The air crackled. The pendant in my pocket started to vibrate, pulling me in. I hadn't just stumbled upon this place. I had awakened something long dormant. Fear rose in me like lava. I could hear it now, a low rumble within the earth that pulsed with the whispers. And just as I turned to flee, a piercing shadow burst from the depths behind me. I barely had time to scream. I felt a jolt of cold air hit my back as the shadow lunged. I spun around, my heart in my throat, but in that instant, everything went dark. The flashlight had extinguished, plunging me into an abyss where the only sound was my own rapid breathing. That low rumble morphed into something more, an echo of footsteps that closed in on me from all sides. Panic surged through me. I stumbled back, desperate to flee, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. The whispers engulfed me, a chorus of voices overlapping, pleading yet sinister. Stay. Follow. They pulled at the edges of my mind. A lure I couldn't resist. I fumbled in my pocket for the pendant, hoping its light would guide me. The metal was cold against my fingers, vibrating with a strange energy. I took a deep breath, then pressed it to my chest. Just as I did, a faint glow escaped from it, illuminating my immediate surroundings. Before me, I saw the outline of the stone circle, but now it glimmered like it was alive. Tendrils of mist curled around it, and the glint at the center was unmistakable, a shimmering crystal that pulsed with a rhythm matching the whispers. I needed to reach it, but the realization hit me like a brick. The shadow was still there, waiting. I could feel eyes on me, a gaze that wrapped around me like a shroud. I shot a glance over my shoulder. Nothing. But I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. With a deep breath, I stepped closer to the circle, the pendant's warmth spreading through me. As I entered the circle, the temperature dropped even further. I could see my breath, clouds of white mist forming in the darkness. The glowing crystal beckoned, more vivid as I approached. I hesitated for a moment, uncertainty clawing at my mind. What would happen if I touched it? I reached out cautiously, feeling the pull intensify. Just as my fingers grazed the surface, a sudden force jolted me back. The pendant flew from my grasp, spinning in the air before landing on the ground with a thud. The whispers turned into shrieks, harmonizing into a crescendo that buzzed in my ears like a swarm of angry bees. The shadow swirled around the stones, forming a figure that towered before me. My heart raced as it coalesced into something that resembled a face, a visage that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. It stared directly into my soul, as if judging my worthiness to be in its presence. "Why have you come?" Its voice resonated, echoing in the hollow of my chest. I didn't mean to. My voice faltered under its scrutiny. The shadows pulsed, and I felt the urge to run, yet I couldn't budge. "Your intentions matter not. You are here now." The figure pointed toward the crystal, and the whispers transformed into a single, clear command. "Claim what is yours." I looked at the gem, its surface rippling like water. It felt less like a stone and more like a living entity. Something deep within me stirred, drawing me closer. But with each step, I felt the weight of the shadow's presence behind me, oppressive and demanding. I hesitated again, caught in a delicate battle between the shadow's influence and my own fear. That's when the whispers began again, louder, clearer. "Accept it, or lose forever." As if waking from a stupor, I lunged for the crystal. But before I could reach it, something pulled me backward, wrenching me from the circle. I landed on the cold ground, gasping in disbelief, watching as the shadow shrieked in fury, fading back into the night. For a long moment, all was silent. I scrambled to my feet, my pulse racing, understanding dawning on me. This wasn't over. Something had changed in me. All at once, I felt that first pang of regret. I hadn't realized what I had escaped, what had really been waiting for me in the woods. Then, in the silence, I knew. "It's coming," I whispered, and as the moon broke through the clouds, I could hear it again, the whispers woven into the wind, drawing me back into darkness. The night had swallowed the last remnants of light as I trudged back toward the trail, my thoughts racing. I needed to get out of those woods, away from that cursed place, but my feet seemed to move in slow motion amidst the trembling dread in my chest. I could still hear the echoes of the whispers, taunting me, nudging me, urging me to return. I made my way through the trees, but every rustle, every crack of a twig made me freeze. The shadows danced at the corners of my vision, and it felt like the night was alive, watching, waiting. I wished I could turn on my flashlight, but with its sudden plunge into darkness, the battery was dead. I felt exposed and helpless without the pendant's glow. As I reached the edge of the woods, the moon's light spilled down, revealing a narrow path. The air felt charged, heavy with uncertainty. I glanced back toward the stone circle, half expecting to see that figure emerge again. Nothing. Just darkness. I took a step forward. That's when I noticed something strange beneath a nearby tree. Something glinted at the base, almost obscured by undergrowth. Curiosity piqued. I approached cautiously. As I got closer, my heart dropped. The object was the pendant, the one I'd dropped in the circle, now lying in the dirt, untouched and somehow unscathed. I reached for it, but a sudden rush of wind knocked me off balance. A chill ran through me as murmuring sounds began to swell again, rising from the earth itself. Panic surged anew. I snatched the pendant and stumbled back, clutching it tightly. The whispers shifted. They didn't plead any longer. They were accusing, angry. Then I heard a distinct voice break through the chaos. "You took something that isn't yours." I spun around, scanning my surroundings for the source. My eyes darted across the trees, but I saw nothing. Were the woods alive with spirits now? I could feel the air change around me, thickening like clouds before a storm. Suddenly, shadows twisted into view, branching out from the trees, taking shape. I stumbled further back, every instinct shouting at me to run. Then, in the clearing of moonlight, I saw it, a figure breaking from the dark. A woman stood there, her face pale but radiant like a ghost, eyes shimmering with intensity. "Why have you come back?" Her voice floated, ethereal yet firm. I didn't mean to disturb anything," I stammered, the pendant clutched in my fist like a lifeline. "That place is not for the living. Your presence has awakened things best left undisturbed." She stepped closer, and I recoiled, caught between fascination and sheer terror. "You will have to face the consequences of your actions." "What do you mean?" I asked, the weight of realization settling in. This wasn't simply about my encounter with the shadow. There was something deeper, something more dangerous in these woods. The woman's expression hardened. "You must leave now. Your return has drawn attention. They will come for you." Before I could respond, she twisted away, sinking into the darkness, leaving only the rustling leaves in her wake. My heart pounded in my chest. Who was she? What had I awakened? Then everything changed. The whispers crescendoed into maddening chaos, and I felt an all-consuming fear wash over me. Something dark was indeed coming. I had to move. I turned and ran, darting down the path, branches scratching at my arms. I could feel a presence behind me, chasing me through the night. The woods felt alive, alive with danger. Suddenly I tripped and fell, the pendant slipping from my grasp. I heard it hit the ground with a soft thud as I scrambled to my feet. That's when I saw it, I thought, horror washing over me. At the edge of the path, a shadow emerged. A massive silhouette that consumed the moonlight, filled with a primal hunger. And it was coming for me. I tore down the path, heart racing, adrenaline surging through me. The shadow was still there, looming, spreading dread like a disease. I glanced back and my breath caught in my throat. The figure was closer, moving with an unnatural grace, gliding just above the forest floor. I pushed myself harder, my legs screaming with fatigue, but the instinct to survive drove me onward. I had to reach the tree line, the safety of the open field waiting beyond. But the woods felt endless, branches whipping against my skin, the whispering voices still trailing behind me, urging the shadow forward. Just ahead, I saw a flicker of moonlight illuminating an opening between the trees. I sprinted toward it, my feet pounding the ground, desperate for escape. As I neared the clearing, I felt a sudden pull, as if the very earth was trying to hold me back. Then, out of nowhere, a figure materialized in front of me, a girl, no older than I was, with wide, panic-filled eyes. She blocked my path, hair wild and matted as if she'd been through hell. "Don't go into the light!" she screamed, her voice frantic. "It's a trap!" I skidded to a halt, barely avoiding a collision. "What are you talking about? I need to get out of here!" She shook her head, fear etched across her face. "You don't understand. They're watching. You have to." At that moment, the shadow surged behind me, a deep growl rumbling through the air. I could feel its presence tightening around me, the very atmosphere crackling with its rage. I instinctively took a step backward, and the girl grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the trees again. "Come on," she urged. "We have to hide." We ducked behind a mass of thick underbrush, my pulse pounding in my ears, drowning out everything else. I peered out cautiously, watching the shadow roam closer, its featureless face searching. My heart sank as I realized it could sense us, feel our fear. "What is that?" I whispered, terrified. The girl didn't take her eyes off the figure. "It's one of them, twisted by the woods. They guard the secrets here, bound to the land. We shouldn't have come back." "What do you mean, shouldn't have?" I didn't know. Finally, the shadow stopped, its form shifting ominously as it seemed to consider our hiding place. I could see its outline pulsing, hungry for something, someone. The girl let out a shaky breath and whispered, "We need to find a way out, and fast, if it discovers us." Her voice trailed off, the implication hanging heavy between us. I turned to her. "How do you know all of this?" "Because I was once like you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I entered the woods too. I didn't leave." Panic rose again as I registered her words. The woods were not just a place of danger, they were a graveyard of souls, trapped forever in the shadows. Before I could process what she was saying, the air shifted, thick with electric tension. The shadow moved, casting about for its next prey. I could feel the girl trembling beside me, and I desperately searched for a plan, a way out. And then, as if compelled by some unseen force, the shadow lunged toward our hiding spot. I felt the ground beneath me tremble, the world holding its breath, and I knew we had to act. "We can't hide forever," I muttered, determined to fight. But in that moment of uncertainty, something else shifted in the atmosphere. A new sound, echoing amidst the chaos, pierced the air. I turned, wide-eyed, and suddenly realized we weren't alone after all. A haunting melody filled the woods, echoing like a siren's call. Instinct kicked in, and I grabbed the girl's hand. "We need to follow it." "Are you crazy?" she shouted. "That could lead us right into the heart of it." "Or it might lead us out," I insisted. Just then, the shadow lunged again. With no time to think, we charged toward the sound, desperate for escape, unaware of just how deep this nightmare would go. We plunged into the thicket, branches clawing at our clothes as we raced toward the source of that eerie melody. The sound twisted through the trees, beckoning with a strange allure, drowning out the growls of the shadow behind us. The girl, what was her name, was still clutching my hand, her fingers cold, and I could feel her trembling. I didn't want to think about it, but doubt crept in. What if the song was just another trap? "Are you sure this is a good idea?" she gasped, clearly wavering. "We don't have a choice," I yelled back, pushing forward. I had to believe it would lead us somewhere safe. As we moved deeper into the woods, the melody grew louder, almost hypnotic. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. Somewhere in my gut, I felt the pull of exhaustion, but we pressed on, weaving through trees that seemed to narrow around us. Then I caught a glimpse of movement to my right, something darting between the trunks. My heart raced again. I pulled the girl closer and glanced back. The shadow was still there, but it was slowing down. "Keep going," I urged her, trying to stifle my own fear. What was happening? Why was the figure waiting behind? We reached a clearing, and the moonlight spilled like silver across the ground. The melody stopped abruptly, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed down on us. I let go of her hand, breathing heavily. "What happened to the music?" She stared wide-eyed at the trees, as if sensing something else. "It's not gone. It's just waiting." Suddenly, the air crackled again, a force building in the space around us. I squinted into the darkness surrounding the clearing, searching for signs of movement. "That shadow, it's playing with us," she whispered, taking a step back. Before I could respond, the shadow surged from the edge of the woods, and I flinched, instinctively taking a few steps back. Then I saw it. A figure materialized with the darkness. It was a woman, her face gaunt, eyes wide and pleading, yet also frozen in despair. "Help me," she cried out, her voice blending with the haunting melody that had drawn us here. I felt my heart drop. "Is that—" I began, but the girl cut me off. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head furiously. "It's a trick! Don't look into her eyes!" The woman's eyes bore into mine, and for a moment I felt the urge to reach out. A part of me wanted to save her, to pull her from whatever trap held her, but every instinct screamed to turn away. Just then, shadows danced along the ground, swirling like smoke, their tendrils reaching for us. "We need to go," I yelled, grabbing the girl's wrist again. But as we turned to run, the ground beneath us shifted. More figures started to emerge from the trees, shadows twisting into forms that looked almost human. There were too many to count, a chorus of anguished faces, their mouths moving as if in silent screams. Panic clawed up my throat. What now? As if they sensed our doubt, they advanced. The woman's voice echoed in my mind. "Help me!" And I knew we were trapped, with monsters lurking in the dark, the way out obscured by fear. Then everything went dark. The ground beneath us trembled violently, and I felt myself slipping. "We can't stay here," I screamed as the shadows surged closer. That's when I saw it. A faint glimmer just beyond the trees to my left. A path, barely visible, weaving its way through the chaos. "This way," I shouted, pulling the girl toward the flicker of hope. But I didn't know if it would lead us to freedom or deeper into the nightmare that held this forest captive. I sprinted down that narrow path, yanking the girl along with all the strength I had left. The shadows shrieked behind us, their voices mingling with the night silence, a haunting cacophony that made my skin crawl. Every step felt like a countdown, the darkness nipping at our heels. "Don't look back," I shouted, pushing through the thick brush. The undergrowth snagged at us, but I had to keep moving. The glimmer ahead danced like a beacon, drawing us closer with each hurried breath. "Where are we going?" she panted, her hand tightening around mine. "Somewhere, anywhere, away from here," I gasped, adrenaline fueling my resolve. But part of me feared it wouldn't be enough. We burst through the thicket and emerged onto a dried-up creek bed. The moonlight illuminated the rocky ground ahead, casting skewed shadows that danced wildly. It was eerily quiet, but I could still feel the weight of something watching us, lurking just beyond the trees. I glanced at the girl, her face pale and glistening with sweat. "Stay close," I urged, scanning the perimeter. "We have to find a way out." Before we could take another step, A rustling from behind made my stomach drop. The figures from the shadows weren't gone. They were just regrouping. They emerged one by one, haunting and hollow. "Run!" I yelled, yanking the girl toward the far side of the creek. I ran like the wind, but the shadows followed, their whispers pushing through the air like a cold breeze. "Why are they doing this?" she shouted, stumbling slightly. "I don't know," I barked, my heart pounding in my ears. Desperation clawed at me as I spotted an abandoned cabin perched on the creek bank. "Over there, we can hide." We dashed to the cabin, its dilapidated walls sagging as if in surrender. I swung the door open, praying it would hold as a barrier against whatever hunted us. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust, the shadows dim and flickering with uncertainty. I pulled the girl inside and quickly shut the door. We leaned against it, both of us gasping for air. "What now?" she whispered, her voice unsettlingly calm amidst the chaos. I strained to hear if the shadows were following. They were close, their voices melding into a sorrowful chant outside the cabin. "Help us! Help us!" "Do you hear that?" I asked, eyes wide with fear. "They're not just shadows. They're calling for something." The girl's face fell, realization washing over her. "It's like they need something to be free." "But what could that be?" I mumbled, my mind racing as I backtracked through our encounter with the woman and her words. Suddenly the floor creaked beneath us, an unsettling groan echoing in the silence. I turned just in time to see a patch of darkness shifting across the wooden floor. "They want to take us. We need to move." Before she could respond, the shadows surged through the cracks in the door like smoke, swirling around our feet. I grabbed her and bolted for the only other exit I could see, a small window behind an overturned table. As we scrambled through the narrow opening, the world around us darkened. With one last glance back at the cabin, I held my breath. The shadows clawed at the air, their voices growing louder, desperate. We landed outside, tumbling into the gravel. I instinctively pulled the girl up and turned to run, but then I stopped dead in my tracks. In the distance, I saw the lady again, standing among the trees, her eyes fixated on us. "Help me!" she cried once more, echoing through the night. A chill shot through me as I realized this time it wasn't just a plea, it was a command. "Don't look at her," I shouted, but I could feel my own eyes being drawn to her. The shadows danced closer, swirling around us like a storm. I knew we might not escape this, but I also knew we had to try. I grabbed the girl's hand tightly and shouted, we run now." Together we sprinted into the darkened woods, uncertain of where the next path would lead and what awaited us at the end. The night had only just begun revealing its secrets. We stumbled deeper into the woods, hearts racing, breath coming in short bursts. The shadows were still pursuing us, a haunting whisper growing louder, all-consuming in its desperation. The shadows twisted around the trees, flickering between worlds, but behind me the girl kept pace, her eyes gleaming with terror and determination. "Where are we going?" she gasped, panting heavily. "I don't know, just keep moving," I urged, keeping my grip on her hand. The darkness pulsed around us, alive, pushing against our resolve with every step we took. We reached another clearing, and I felt the air shift once more. The shadows seemed to coalesce into a wall, blocking our escape toward the other side. I turned to face the girl, desperation creeping in. What if it only wants us to turn back? Before she could reply, the terrifying presence enveloped us again, elements of the woods that had come to life, swirling in anticipation. The shadow figures backed up, awaiting something as the air thickened with tension. A rush of cold air swept through, sending a shiver down my spine. And then it happened. Just as I feared, the girl froze, her gaze drawn toward the figure of the woman again, who seemed almost ethereal, her form flickering, like an old memory trying to resurface. "Help me. I need help." "No!" I shouted, shaking her arm. "Don't look at her." But it was too late. The girl's eyes were entranced, and in that moment I feared I'd lost her too. The shadows surged with a ferocity that felt like the heartbeat of the woods itself, pulling the girl toward them, while I struggled to hold her back. "Get a grip!" I yelled, dragging her to the ground as more shadowy hands reached out, trying to envelop her. The woman's face twisted with sadness, but the whispers came on like a wave, urging us forward. "You can save her! Help her!" With a rush of adrenaline, I yanked the girl back, my grip unwavering. The shadows recoiled, momentarily thrown off balance. I dragged her away from the figure until I reached the edge of the clearing. "We can't stay here." The girl blinked, the mist of confusion clearing from her mind. "What?" Her words were interrupted by the cacophony surrounding us, shadows creeping closer. "Just trust me. We need to break through. Now." Together we sprinted toward the dense foliage beyond the clearing, adrenaline pushing us forward. The shadows wailed behind us, their cries a mix of desperation and fury, echoing off the trees. "Help us! Help us!" I took one last glance at the shadowy figure of the woman, her expression twisted between sorrow and some deeper yearning that felt almost palpable. I didn't know who she was, nor what had happened to her, but in that instant, I felt their hunger, and it terrified me. Then we bolted into the trees, the darkness pressing close, branches whipping at our faces, the sounds of the night swallowing everything else whole. We stumbled into another glade, heartbeats echoing in our ears. Just ahead, the trees opened up to reveal a narrow trail that sloped downward. "Go," I urged, darting ahead. The air felt like icy tendrils wrapping around us, and I could hear the low growl of shadows behind, hungry and relentless. As we raced down the path, the ground began to shift beneath our feet. The shadows chased us, clawing at the very foundation of the woods. I could almost feel the whispers pulling at my mind, urging me to stop, to surrender. "Give in," they taunted. "You cannot escape." "Don't listen," I shouted, forcing my legs to push harder. "We're almost there." But as we reached the end of the trail, I saw it. A barrier looming ahead, tall and dark, tenebrous clouds swirling around it. A tree, ancient and gnarled, stood before us, its roots stretching outwards into the creeping darkness. "Is this it?" The girl panted, anxiety lacing her voice. I think we can push through," I said, doubt creeping in, but we had no choice. As we edged closer, shadows writhed around the tree, a living entity tempting us to turn back. "Don't let it take you," I urged, feeling the chill pierce through my very being. We had to face whatever danger loomed at the end. I grabbed the girl's hand, and together we stepped toward the dark barrier, breathing heavily, the shadows swirling closer as if to claim us. Just as we crossed the threshold, everything went dark, the whispers fading into an uneasy silence. And then, suddenly, light flooded our surroundings, leaving us disoriented. We stumbled forward into a small glade at the base of a sunlit hill. The woods behind us vanished, the shadows dissipating like fog under the morning sun. We collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air, heartbeat slowing just a fraction. Sunlight bathed us, warm, welcoming. "What just happened?" the girl asked, bewildered. I shook my head, trying to make sense of it all. "I don't know. I think we escaped." But then, as I caught my breath and glanced back toward the woods, unease washed over me. In the distance, I could see a flicker against the trees, deep shadows lingering where they shouldn't, whispering secrets that made my skin crawl. "It's not over," I whispered, fear settling deep in my bones. Though we had escaped, every edge of my understanding told me the darkness had not vanished completely. As I looked toward the hills bathed in sunlight, a shiver ran through me. I still felt a weight pressing on my soul, a connection to something that might not rest easily. It was over, for now. But with those woods so close, I couldn't help but feel the unanswered questions would forever linger, waiting for the next call to return.